Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our first roundtable of the academic year with Tom McKeown on Class of '83 on turning corporate experience into entrepreneurial success. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. This event is organized by the Trinity Entrepreneurial Network. As we all know, the Bantam spirit has always been an entrepreneurial one. And in our alumni body, we are proud to have many successful and aspiring entrepreneurs of all ages and in every career field. The Trinity Entrepreneur Network, or TEN, provides a dedicated space for Trinity entrepreneurs to connect with each other or with current students. For more information, please contact Melissa Bronzino-Regan, and please check the chat for Melissa's email address. Today's program is a part of a mentally serious roundtable conversation with Trinity entrepreneurs on the topics of that interesting to fellow entrepreneurs. Before we begin today's program, here are a few housekeeping notes and announcements. During our presentation, we recommend that you set your view to speaker view and then switch it to gallery view for our Q&A session. Please make sure you are muted throughout our presentation. Our program will be recorded and available on our website later. And if you feel uncomfortable or since we're recording the presentation, please feel free to turn off your camera. Also, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions or offer ideas throughout our presentation. My name is Isolved Gabramariam. I am a junior majoring in biomedical engineering, focusing on electrical engineering. Trinity College has a student-led entrepreneurship club, and I am the social media chair for the club. It's my pleasure to represent the other members of our club and to welcome them on our today's call. I would also like to tell you about the Bantam Career Network, or BCN. The Trinity Entrepreneur Network has created a group in BCN for alumni and students, specifically for who are interested on entrepreneurship. This group provides a dedicated space that will allow students and alumni to ask questions and seek advice with other entrepreneurs. After this event, please complete your profile on the Bantam Career Network. The BCN is like a LinkedIn, but it's only open to the Trinity community. It's a great way for all students and alumni to connect, so we welcome you all there. If you have ideas for other topics, would like to recommend a speaker or even volunteer yourself, please reach out to Melissa. Again, Melissa's email address is in the chat. And finally, we hope you will share your feedback in our post-event survey that you're going to receive in an email tomorrow. Today, we are delighted to have Tom McKeown with us. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. It was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. I've got a slide presentation, which I'm going to walk through, which kind of highlights the topic I'm talking to today, turning corporate experience into entrepreneurial success. Put together just a brief agenda, what I'm going to cover. I'll give you just a brief background on myself. Talk a little bit about my entrepreneurial career journey that got me to the point where I was willing and able to co-found and build my own company. Talk a little bit how that went and our exit when we sold the company a little over a year ago. And then I'll kind of finish up with just some lessons and advice to aspiring entrepreneurs. We can open up for questions, and I can even do just a brief demonstration of the product that I built as it is now. If I'm looking slightly to the right, it's because my camera is on my computer and I'm operating off of an extended screen here, so not trying to slight anybody. So brief background on me. That is graduation day in May of 1983. That's me on the left there in front of Jarvis. Took a picture with my college friends. One reason to point this out is probably the 7 people, including myself, in that photograph are all still very close friends today. I see all of them every year, and they're like I say, amongst my closest friends. I don't know that lady on the right, though. She just managed to get into the picture. But so I graduated in 1983. I had my degree was in mathematics and computer science. They offered to let me pick a BA or a BS. I chose a BA for whatever reasons at the time. Give you an idea about the times back then, at least technology-wise. The engineering center, which was located, I can't remember what the name of the building is over there behind Jones, was where we did all our computer work. And all of the equipment back there was Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC. They were at the time the second largest computer manufacturer to IBM at the time. They subsequently, though, got acquired by Compaq and then Hewlett Packard, so they're no long. And we were just in the my senior year, we upgraded from the PDP-11 to the VAX. So some historical trivia if you're into that sort of thing. I didn't graduate from college necessarily wanting to be start my own company or to be an entrepreneur, but it was never not out of the possibility or my mind that I might want to do that. Very early in my professional life, I live in Dallas. I grew up in New York, but eventually made my way down here to Dallas. I went to a small luncheon where I got to meet Ross Perot. Wasn't me, but one of the people in the audience asked, what advice would you give to someone wanting to build their own company? And his advice was somewhat the advice that I followed was, go to work in business, learn a particular business cold, find the unmet needs, and then build a business to fill them. Very simple advice. Took me a couple of decades to put it into practice, but really that was kind of a guiding in the back of my mind as I went through my my career journey. To give you an idea of what that took, so I graduated in 1983, and somewhat the whole computer technology landscape was under the shadow of the IBM PC, which was introduced in 1981, just a couple of years earlier. It was really the first system that was an open platform from the standpoint that hundreds of different vendors built clone machines like the IBM PC, and probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of companies built software to run on it. Prior to that, or not too much before that, generally all systems were proprietary. The company that built the hardware also built the software. So this opened up a big market, a bunch of markets. And first couple of companies I went to work for were in that vein. Lanier was an office products company that tried to get into the PC business and was moderately successful before fading back into what they did best. But then I worked for a couple of pioneers in the industry, 3Com, which was probably, if not the first, one of the first companies that did PC networking, tying PCs together. And then I went to work for Adobe Systems, one of the premier, still great software success stories in the world in America. And I arrived there in the early to mid 90s to help launch Adobe Acrobat. So I was involved in marketing and selling the first Adobe Acrobat when it hit the market. Kind of the second wave or pivot in my career came about in the mid 90s when the internet just went nuts. It'd been around a while, the World Wide Web, but in the mid 90s, everybody had a website. I remember when I was in my last year at Adobe, we put up our website for the first time, I think in 1995. And without even advertising it, 20,000 people hit our site the first day, to give you an idea on how everything launched at. But then I went to work for several startups. All the companies on the left were public, larger companies, 100 millions or so in revenue. The ones in the middle, some you might recognize, WebEx. I got there slightly before they went public. And Expert City, which you might not know the name of, but they invented GoToMeeting, which was a competitor of WebEx, and subsequently got acquired by Citrix. So the ability to, go to smaller companies, have a little bit more of an impact, and learn a little bit closer to the source as to what it takes to, start a smaller company. Kind of my third and final pivot was more around a lifestyle choice. So by the early 2000s, I was married, had a young family. I lived in Dallas, and all of the companies I had worked for prior were all based in California, with the exception of Lanier. So I spent a lot of time commuting back and forth, particularly as I'd taken management and executive jobs to California, and made the decision that I didn't want to move to California. So in about 2004, 2005, I started looking for companies to work for in Dallas, where I live, Dallas, Texas, and found that it was somewhat of a popular hub for human resource software startups. I don't know what particular about this environment lent itself to that, but there were several just in the Dallas area, also in Houston and Austin. But so I actually went to work for two of them, both as president and COO, reporting to the founder. One was Acquire Solutions, which got acquired by a company called PeopleFluent, and then a company called HR Smart, which was a talent management company, which I worked for about 4 years, and that also got acquired by a larger software company. However, it was there at HR Smart that the founder there, even though we were about the same age, actually became a mentor and a sponsor of mine after we worked together and helped. And I was there for kind of the latter stage of the company, building it up and selling it off. After we sold the company, he approached me and said, how would you like to start your own company? And I can kind of help you and back you up financially as much as possible. So thought about that. It was about a year ahead, a couple of months ahead of my 56th birthday. So I was deciding, that's something I wanted to do at this stage in my life. But I did. I had been formulating what I thought would be a pretty good offering to the particular space, and kind of keeping in line with Ross Perot had said. I had spent almost 15 years in the HR space at that time, and I had gotten to know the business very cold, and I had seen a couple of areas where I might be able to build an offering that could complement what was going on there. So in I want to just point out, just as this descending went on, I went from large companies to medium-sized companies to smaller companies. And I was always able to increase my cachet with the place I went to by bringing practices and experiences from the larger companies to the next level down. You can't steal intellectual property, but things that you can learn at larger companies, like simple things like building a recruiting process that has phases in it, or onboarding and training new employees. Just bringing those practices to newer companies helped me carve out a better niche in these smaller companies as I progressed. But TrenData, basically we founded in June of 2017. My partner was the former founder and CEO of HR Smart, Mon Hamden. And we started with a very small staff. We had 3.5 employees, as I say. I was the CEO. I had a head of development and a VP of sales, both who had come from HR Smart. And I had an outsourced controller who was our controller at HR Smart to handle the finances, but she didn't want a full-time job, and actually eventually started a business where she signed up multiple clients, but I didn't need her full-time, so it actually worked out well. And the product we built is a pretty popular space now in HR called People Analytics. And if you look at the diagram over to the right, one of the defining characteristics of the human resource software market is there's tons of applications, and often they're all very siloed with their own reporting, their own databases and everything. So what we built was an engine that would pull in data from all of these disparate sources put them onto one platform, and give you the opportunity to have end-to-end intelligence on your employees and your workforce. We can not only bring in the most current data, we could bring in historical data. So you would have not only a library of key metrics for the entire employee life cycle, but you'd have the ability to trend these metrics into analytics. And it was kind of the genesis for the name TrenData, was analytics are trended data points or trended metrics. So you can see in the logo, there's actually a hidden double D, TrenData. And also, since we were bringing over all the historical data from these various systems, we were able to use that historical knowledge, put it to an AI engine, and actually calculate and predict trends, such as what direction is your turnover going, or how long is it taking you to hire employees, and what can you do, what can the system recommend that you do to shorten those or put those trends in the right direction. So we built the offering kind of while we were all doing other consulting gigs before 2017, and we actually started in 2017. We were able to almost start selling the product. So if you look at the next slide here over to the left, probably a familiar figure to some of you if you watch Shark Tank. This gentleman can be a little obnoxious, but he actually often has some very good points. And the one I took to heart very early, which I knew from working in business, is if you don't know a lot, you think building the product is what's the big cost. The real cost is acquiring customers. Not only acquiring them, but supporting them and keeping them, and make sure that whatever you spend on that is less than you charge them. So very early on, I realized that I didn't want to invest in a large sales force to sell the product. What we did is we divided the market up into really two segments. These are popular segments in enterprise in business, but we had an enterprise space, which was employees, companies and employees of more than 5,000 employees. We decided that myself and the VP of sales, we would target these companies directly to try and sign them up directly with us, because they were big fish, and if we got them, they would be worth the sales cycle. Down at the bottom end, we still wanted, that's where we'd get our mass of customers, but it really didn't justify it on a basis to go out and hire salespeople to sell to this market. So what we did, which is not uncommon in software technology sales, is we sought to find a partner who could maybe resell our solution, and that way we wouldn't have to hire a direct sales force to sell to that level. We signed up a couple, but we had the most success with a popular name called ADP. They're very big in the payroll and human resource space. We didn't necessarily partner with them, but they had built what's called a partner marketplace, where they had a bunch of products listed that if the ADP salespeople were selling something, it was an offering they didn't have, they would direct people towards this marketplace. And we signed up, and we were actually the only analytics product they had in it at the beginning. So with this model, we were able to launch and have some pretty good initial success with the solution. So we got most of our volume on the mid-market side, but we're also able to add, enterprise sales as we went along. And for the first 3 years, we were able to constantly increase the number of clients we brought on at the company. What was also very important is in the first 3 years, we had 0 customer attrition. And I'll talk about how we licensed the product a little further on, but essentially we brought on clients, we kept the clients. And because of this sales model that we were working, we were able to put most of the proceeds of what we were selling into development, as opposed to hiring and replacing salespeople, and enabled us to keep a technology edge in our solution offering. We were also able to go out and get a seed round funding in late 2018 to put additional funds into the company. And we had a pretty good trajectory, and things were going, really well through 2019. Of course, we all know what happened in 2019, or actually the end of 2019 going into 2020, is we had COVID-19, which broke out and put a stop to a lot of sales and corporate expenditures, as companies didn't quite know what was coming. Also, a little earlier in December 2019, maybe buoyed by what they saw from what we were selling, ADP came out with their own analytics solution. So we were no longer the darling in there that was being picked out. Their salespeople started selling their own analytics solution. So those two things combined, we had the COVID-19. We actually lost a few smaller clients during 2020, but towards the second half of the year, we were able to sign up a few more direct enterprise clients. So even though the number of clients we had decreased, we were still able to increase our bookings, our sales for the year, as far as how much we brought in. It was just fewer clients, more money. So as we were finishing out 2020, we knew that our number one goal was to go out and find a partner that would replace ADP on this low-end volume. Before I go into that, I did want to talk just a little bit on how we licensed and sold the product. So really, in software sales, there's two methodologies of selling or licensing the software. The most current and common is the cloud-based SaaS model, software as a service, where you essentially rent the software on a year-to-year basis. And the software is implemented, I say elsewhere, but basically it's not implemented at your facility. It's implemented in the cloud or somewhere else that the vendor has it housed for a commonality. Prior to that, most of software was sold on premise, where the client would buy the software, they would actually own it, they wouldn't be renting it, and they would install it in their own companies with their own IT department, and they was implemented on site, they owned it, and that was that. That methodology has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur for the most part. Pretty much, at least enterprise sales is for the most part done through this cloud-based SaaS approach. And the reason being is it's very simple. You really just anybody to access the software has a device that has internet capability, whether it's your PC, your tablet, your phone. And you implement your software in a multi-tenanted type environment at a cloud provider. Common ones out there, the big ones are Amazon Web Services. That's where we built our product, but there's Microsoft Azure, and there's also Google, or the three big cloud manufacturers. Prior to that, in like the mid 2000s, a lot of companies had to build their own clouds, private data centers, and that was troublesome and cost prohibitive for entrepreneurs, because you'd have to do all your audits, security checks and everything yourself. But building in these corporate clouds, they provide all the security and everything. So you just have to build your software in there, and whenever your clients ask, how secure are you, you can just give them the list and stuff right from AWS or Azure. The way we charge for the product, or the way anybody in this model charges, generally, if it's a involved enough product, you'll charge a one-time setup fee to get it implemented for the clients. And then you'll charge a subscription, which could be monthly, annually, quarterly, or annually. Entrepreneurs or startups like ourselves would choose to do annual subscriptions and get all the money up front. Some larger companies do it monthly, so that the revenue is more recognizable and comparable to how you put it on your books. And I'll talk about that a little below. But again, what's really key in this SaaS business is renewals, being able to after the contract's up, being able to keep your clients on and continually signing up with you. And I'll talk about that a little in the valuation conversation. But just from an accounting standpoint, to give you an idea, you know, as you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to just really bring in more than you're spending. So bookings are basically sales. That's, you know, I sell a deal for $120,000 per year. But the revenue is what the government lets you, how they let you recognize it. So take that example. If I sell a deal that's $120,000 a year in recurring revenue and some setup on top of that, but $120,000 a year, I get the $120,000 today, and then I'll get another $120,000 a year from today. So if I have $120,000 and my expenses are $80,000, you know, I'm $40,000 ahead of the game. So it might look like, you know, I'm making a profit, but the government would only let you recognize that since it's over a year, $10,000 a month over the next 12 months. So what you find is a lot of cloud software companies, particularly startups, don't look like they're profitable on the books because of the way the recognition is. So instead of having 120,000 minus 80, I've got 10,000 minus 80 in my accounting books. So it might look like I'm losing $70,000. So when often asked, when you're out selling your product, clients will often ask, you know, are you guys profitable? And the phrase is more that you're cash flow positive. You're bringing in more than you're taking out on a monthly basis. So just a side note for anybody who was curious on that. Anyway, so we were out looking for a new partner to take up the kind of the low end or the mid-market space for our product. So this was about January. This was January 2021. We'd grown to 14 employees. Myself and the head of development was still there. Our VP of sales left for a better corporate or a bigger corporate job. But we were able to hire more developers, more QA. And again, I went with kind of the fractional route for everything else. I actually, rather than hiring salespeople, I hired sales agents, which were people who sold more than one company's products, and I paid them a high commission rate and didn't have to necessarily pay them a salary. I kept with the half controller, and I added a half marketing person, fractional marketing person. So this is what my company stood like in January 2021. And the partner we were seeking was a company called isolved. They're a rather successful mid-market company selling HR solutions, HR and payroll solutions. And if you look over to the left, it's the same diagram I had early, because they had all of the solutions that we were looking to tie together. So very early on in the course of discussions, it became obvious that they wanted to acquire us rather than partner with us and just plop us right in there as you know, their offering for analytics. And they were a competitor. They are a competitor of ADP. So, you know, they wanted to have a solution that can do as much. So, so it took about 3 months from letter of intent to, we went through first a financial due diligence, then a technology due diligence, and then finally, so the first two took about 2 weeks each, and then we went through a legal due diligence, which took about 2.5 months. So it was the largest part. Once you got lawyers involved, they started churning the billing machines, and it went longer than the others two combined. So the sale and the way that our company was put together. So we actually formed the company as an LLC, a limited liability corporation, as opposed to a C Corp, which a lot of software companies start off. One reason was it was kind of a less scrutinized entity as far as requiring audits and such. And since there were two of us at the beginning, myself and Mon, it meant it was easier to form as kind of a partnership. So we started off with our various ownerships, and then when we added the investors later on, we created new shares, and it diluted our shares. So At the time of sale, the company, as far as ownership, looked something like this. We did carve out a piece for options for all of our employees. Some of you may be familiar with share or stock options. What it is basically is you buy a stock or shares for an employee at the price of when they join the company. So if someone joins the company and you value the value of the company at $2 a share, and then when you sell the company, it's at a value of $4 a share, that employee would make $2 per share of however many options they have. All of our employees made money when we sold the company, which was good. And a couple of things about, so what this actually was is they didn't actually buy the company, the entity. It was actually what's called an asset sale. So rather than buying the company entity and everything that's in it, the name and everything, they did what's called an asset sale, which basically they bought everything inside the company. So if you think of a house, it's like leaving the house and they bought all the furniture and the people and everything living inside of the house, and that's what they brought over. A very a minor nuance difference between actually acquiring a company, but the results were pretty much the same. The valuation was built on a multiple of recurring revenue. That's the revenue that is subscription based. A couple of things that factored into that was the length of the contract. So we on average had 3-year contracts. We had a good renewal rate, which helped spike up the valuation, and the sales ramp as well. So if your sales ramp is on an ascent, it's better than if it's flat. And you saw on my prior slides, we were pretty good ascent, and then a little flatter after COVID. So there was some haggling over valuation a little bit, but pretty much it went through normal time. Really, what they wanted was the product. It's, as I always kind of find it funny, is you do all the valuation based on the book of business, and then in the end, really what they're interested in is taking that product, plugging it, and selling to their 5,000 customers, or however many customers isolved has. They have a lot. So the sale was completed in June of 2021, so about 4 years after I founded the company. I'm an employee at isolved now. This is me at our most recent user conference. I'm second from the right there. They had a panel on some of the new technologies they were introducing, and so I was on that. So, essentially, it was, I'd say, a non-traditional journey. Not most entrepreneurs start companies when they're 56. But if I were to, just give some recommendations to people looking at starting their own companies. First of all, as far as validating whether you've got a real product or not, I wouldn't recommend doing anything unless you can beta test it. Beta test is right before release, having clients test out your software. And if you can't beta test it with real customers, you're really just shooting at the dark. Fortunately, I had about 12 years experience in HR, working with companies. I was able to get 5 very good beta testers. And then 1 is being able to get beta testers to test your product. And then 2 is, after they're through testing it, do they want to buy it? That's when you kind of have a product. So we beta tested it with 5, and 4 of them ended up buying it immediately. And another one ended up a little bit later on buying the product. So I would highly recommend, before you release a product to market, to beta test it with real customers. As far as controlling cost and launching, and particularly in the early stages, outsource as much as possible. As you can see, I had a lot of fractional people. Even some of my developers were rent to own, that I hired them as outsource first. Employees are just your biggest cost. Salaries gnaw away at that bank really quickly. And, with employees, you have to find them, onboard them. And if they don't work out, you have to furlough them. So there's a lot of gamble and things that you could avoid if you outsource a lot of these things. One thing I've always found out over the years is patents, trademarks. If you think you can trademark something and own it, nobody else is allowed to build it. That's not good. That's not good advice. The only way to really keep your technology edge is to keep developing and making it better. I've never found patents, trademarks since, what was it, back in the 90s when Apple tried to patent their look and feel, and the court threw it out, and Microsoft got to build Windows. Basically, everything's built on open source, and you can pretty much count that if you got something good, someone's going to steal it and build a competitor company. So with that in mind, never cut development or innovation, or that should be the very last thing on your list. You got to keep building the product and making it better and advancing. As I mentioned earlier, keep an eye on that cost of sales. Don't spend more to get a deal than it costs than the client pays you, and consider that over the lifetime of the deal, not just the initial sale. And the last two are kind of more generic, not necessarily things that I had problems with, but keep good and legal documentation of everything, particularly who owns what in the company. I didn't have any problems with TrenData, but I did have problems with a prior company where the documentation wasn't ironclad, and I didn't get as much from the resulting sale as I should have. So just make sure you have good documentation, particularly of ownership. And if you're a little later in life like myself, make sure your spouse and your family is on board. It's a heavy lift and a lot of work running and starting your own company. Even if you're not poor, you feel very poor. I had to start my own company. I had to go on crappy private health insurance. A lot of things I paid for myself. You're used to being and be humble. You're used to being an executive, and suddenly you have nobody reporting to you, and you're the one out trying to sell to people 20 years younger than you. So, humble, as well as the spouse and family support. So, kind of with that, I don't know how we're doing on time. I could show a quick look at the product before we go to questions. Is that something we have time for?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. So this is what was TrenData People Analytics. It's now isolved Predictive People Analytics. It's a solution that will bring in data from all of your HR sources, give you hundreds of metrics on your employee health, how many people you hired, how long it takes to hire them, on average, how long it takes to fill an open position, what's your average turnover, your churn, employees that you've hired, and other demographics about your organization. You can have as many dashboards as you want. The real value of it, as I say, is the analytics. So for example, for example, I've got turnover is almost 4% this month. The analytics is what allows me to trend it and see if I've got a persistent problem here. So is my turnover rising over the last couple of months? Do I have a problem that's gonna cause me more trouble down the road? But in addition to seeing historical analytics, we use the AI engine, which will actually allow you to do a prediction, and I'll show you based on the historical trends, what's turnover going to be like over the next 6 months. Also in the system, you can filter down and look at subtopics of the group. So for example, if I didn't want to look at all turnover, if I wanted to look at maybe just voluntary turnover, I can apply that filter and it'll bring my view a little more filtered. If I wanted to make it look a little nicer, I can put a trend line in there. And then there's a predictive analysis, which will tell me, what's driving turnover. So for my voluntary turnover, it's telling me that I'm not paying them enough. Some people are leaving at a certain tenure or age, but really salary is what's driving this. So there's a modeling capability in it that I can go over here and look at some particular factors that were affecting turnover. And I can go to example to this one. It says for this group, I'm paying them an average salary of $84,000 a year. I could put in what would happen if I gave everybody in this group, a particular group, a raise. I put that in, and it shows me that I could cut turnover in half by just giving this particular group a raise going forward. So it's predictive analytics. The metrics are the individual data points from a particular time period or month. The analytics is the trending, and the AI, the predictive, is based on the history and everything, what's going to happen going forward. We have a voice activation in here, so you could actually ask these commands as opposed to typing them in. I won't do that on here, but you can also do it by just typing in a search bar. If I wanted to look at all my employees, say, by the various departments they're located in, I can just type that in here, and it will actually go ahead and break that down for me into various departments. So with that, I will go back to my slides and answer any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Tom, for your presentation. We do have time for questions, and we have a couple of questions on the chat, so I'm going to read it for you. The first question is, at age 56, how was your work-life balance? Also, how much of a pay cut did you take, and how long has it taken to increase the current comp?
Well, okay, so a couple of questions there. At age 56, my work-life balance was okay, because both my kids were in college, or they were at the end of high school going into college. So it was really my wife and myself. My wife works, but she didn't work. She's a contractor, so she didn't have health care. That's why I had to buy health care. So that was kind of the biggest burden. I was able to take a salary, which was about 75% of what I was making in corporate. But when COVID-19 hit, I deferred salary for an entire year, and did not recoup that until we actually sold the company. So that was kind of a hardship that year. I didn't take a salary so that we could keep more of our employees on board. And what was the rest of the question?
How much did you pay cut? I think you answered that question.
Yeah. Okay.
There's another question. What was the biggest key to success? What was the biggest key to success, and what would you do differently if you had a chance?
Couple of things. The biggest key to success was we had a good product that people wanted. The toughest thing was overcoming the fact that we were a small company and getting larger companies to buy it. But that's why we kind of adopted the partner strategy. If I were to change anything, going back to that, I probably would have raised more money, because we thought we were doing pretty well up until COVID hits. We didn't really have a big war chest. The flip side of that is, because I didn't raise more money, I owned more of the company when we sold. So it possibly, if I had raised more money, I would have been able to make it through the tough spell a little bit better, and maybe that sales ramp would have kept going and possibly gotten a better valuation. But I was pretty happy with the way it turned out.
Okay. We have another question. Have SAS or SAS multiples contracted meaningfully since the start of the year?
I believe they have. They were still in pretty good shape when I sold my company. It's really has to do with sales runway that companies sees. If the market's going nuts and companies are selling a lot, they can see by adding your product, they'll sell 10,000 of these in a good economy. In a bad economy, they're like, it's still a good product, it'll fit in our mold, but we're not going to see as big a multiple until things get better. So I would say they probably have contracted a bit, but they'll go back because these businesses just keep growing.
Mhm. Okay, what is the benefit to an asset sale versus outright sale of the company?
An asset sale versus an outright sale?
Yeah.
Well, I can only say we were only offered an asset sale, so it didn't. But I actually think the benefit is to the seller because you're able to keep kind of the shell of what the company used to be. So if they wanted to use that entity to sell another product, technically they could because they only sold everything that was in the house. But of course, you sold the technology and all the IP and everything like that, so you couldn't sell the same product again. But there is a benefit to that. I guess you can put more furniture and more people in the house. I don't know.
We have time for a couple of questions. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or even put it in the chat.
Okay.
Hi, I actually had a question. It's Jennifer. I was wondering, how come you took the route of selling the company versus continuing on building the product and raising more money?
It was probably if we hadn't had that little bump with COVID, I might have kept going along that route. But we weren't necessarily attuned when the opportunity first came along to sell the company. But it was a very good valuation and a good fit. I had always though thought that I would eventually sell the company. I didn't think I was going to go to an IPO with it. Just essentially, that's a lot of rigor and diligence and stuff like that. And so I had always pictured this as a product that I would sell, and that's kind of the way I designed the product, that it could fit into a larger company's portfolio. So my goal was always to sell. Happened a little sooner than I thought it did, but like I say, it worked out.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
If no questions, Tom, this is Anthony, class of 04. Not a question. I just wanted to say congrats. I think you timed it perfectly in terms of market and valuations and everything else. So good stuff. Love to see it.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Bill LaPlante, class of 71. What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to stay with the company here. I don't necessarily think I have another startup in me. My possible goal is I might be an investor in startups. My co-founder, really, that's what he does a lot. He's on a lot of boards and invests money. So if I ever were to get involved with startup or things like this again, it would probably be as an investor and advisor. Right now, the things are going well at isolved. They, I have a pretty free hand to design the product. They're very happy with it, and it's selling a lot. So I'm happy at this point. But yeah, the future is promised to no one.
So you're looking to be maybe a dollar angel or an equity angel for future startups?
Possibly, yeah.
Sounds good to me. I'll pitch you.
Hi, this is Monica Calvillo. Can you hear me, folks?
Yes, very. Yep.
Yeah, great. Great presentation. And I have a daughter who's a sophomore at Trinity College right now, majoring in economics. What advice would you give these young adults that are halfway through their college career?
Well, I was when I was in college, Trinity was an interesting place because I was in college. I was on financial aid, and my whole thought of college was Professor Shirk was my economics teacher back then. I think he's got a building named after him, but he always referred to college as an investment in human capital. So my advice to students would to be to treat it as that. Enjoy yourself, have a good time. But remember, you're investing money in yourself for a return down the end. So as you're taking classes and as you're soaking all of the great things you can pull out of school, remember it is an investment. You're looking for a return on the end. So think what you'd be able to do with what you take, several years down the road.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
I think we have time for one last question.
Tom, it's Ted Duff. To the extent you have an opinion on it, in terms of early stage funding, how do you look at convertible notes versus safes? And, do you have a preference, or how do you think about that?
I hadn't had to use a convertible note in my business. However, my my co-founder is a big believer in that. As kind of a first step for investors before actually jumping forward and doing a full investment in the company. So I'd say as kind of a an in-between full investment, that's he seems to be very big on that.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Got a hand up there. I see some.
Yes, yeah.
Hey guys, this is, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Great. This is Basit Chaudhary, class of 2010. Tom, thank you first of all for the presentation. It was super helpful. Just a quick question. In terms of when you were building your product and technology, did you have it built through an in-house engineering development team, or is that something that you outsourced? I know there's two kind of schools of thought to it. We'll have to hear your views. Thank you.
Yeah, so we did outsource it, but I had probably a leg up on most people doing that. So when we sold HR Smart, the company that bought us didn't want our overseas assets. And one of them was where we were doing a lot of development. And my co-founder actually took that and started his own business, which was an outsourced technology, and he did a rent-to-own thing with that. So we actually built it through this particular group, mostly the one developer I hired as my head of development and one or two others. But we were able to build the product through this, just paying them without actually hiring anybody. And then when we got the product built, we put it as a debt on the books and we paid it. And we were able to launch the company with a product. And then as we started doing better, we started hiring more developers, some from there and some full-time. But yeah, I highly would recommend outsourcing as much as possible in the beginning, but maybe keeping your technology head in-house. You do the agile type sprints where everybody develops part of the product. It's really the guy who brings it all together who's the one you want to make sure you hold on to.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, could I ask one last question? This is Bob Babcock. How are you?
Sure.
I was curious about you mentioned the valuation based on the client contract length. I've got a SaaS company and we talk about that all the time. What was your experience?
Well, so our average contract length was really 2 years. We started out with trying to get 3 years, and we got most of them in 3 years, but we would go down to 2. We tried to avoid having a 1-year contract. So the majority were 3 years, but we had a good renewal rate. So a lot of the 2s turned into longer. And
you find that the valuation drops as the term of the contract drops.
Yeah, it's very, because when you think of it, they're giving you a valuation of, whatever, 2 million, your revenues are $2 million. If they figure you've got all 3-year contracts, the company's worth at least $6 million. If, it's less than that, they'll factor that in. And then if you got a renewal rate of, 99%, you can start adding on to 3x from there. And then if you're constantly increasing sales year over year, it adds on to there.
So how about when you see churn, very low churn and a very high sales rate? with a monthly subscription? I've
Oh.
seen people say it's a fractional multiplier rather than even, you know, go that far, or you don't know?
Usually, well, like, you know, companies I know I've done, like
Group.
companies that I've done that do a monthly subscription still sign someone up for a multi-year contract.
Yeah, okay.
So it doesn't matter if you bill them monthly or bill them annually. We probably would have billed monthly, but we needed the money, so we did the annually so we could get the cash up front.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I think if they have any questions and all, probably we can email them your email address or your contact tomorrow, like your contact details tomorrow with the post-event survey. That works.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Tom, for your presentation, time and all. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here for the event with us today.
I got my Trinity gear on. I like to give back, and it was a great experience for me. So I was very happy to do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and be active in our Q&A session. Please look for our post-event survey in an email tomorrow. We'll add Tom's contact details if you have any more questions. And also, please join the Trinity Entrepreneurial Network. Complete your profile on the Bantam Career Network and follow up with Melissa if you would like additional information or if you have any question. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope we'll see you in our next roundtable next month, and have a great day.